Dave. I'm the host of Vintage Comic Book Show and Tell. I'm back with Mick. We're talking war comic books. Mick went through them and he kind of whittled it down a little bit, but they're all right there in hand's distance, so we're going to see. But we have some really awesome books, and I'm excited about this, so if you don't mind, we're going to get to it.
Okay, so I thought I'd start with Russ Heath, who's kind of like one of the great classic artists of war comics. Not just DC War, but Atlas War. So again, like the predecessor to Marvel. The Heath covers that he did for Atlas are legend, and that one in particular that kind of sticks out. You know, the way he's just rushing right at the foreground, towards the foreground. It's out there. Navy action. Atlas had they didn't have big 5 war books. They had something like big 30 war books. You know, there's like 30 something titles for all the Atlases. And one of them is Navy action. They had like different Navy titles that went with this. Yeah, so what? Okay.
I like it.
But the Navy action, what's cool about this one is that you've got Drucker on the inside. There's a killer Drucker story in there, which is a submarine story. A lot of people don't know about Drucker other than his association with Mad Magazine, which is fine because that's where he's a rock star. But before his association with Mad, he was working at DC and Atlas, and some of those Atlas stories are just unbelievable. What I remember from, especially the reason why I think that one's a nice issue is because the story really showcases Drucker's ability to use a chiaroscuro kind of effect between light and shadow, and he was the early master at that. It's nice to see Drucker stuff before he did Mad Magazine.
Thank you. Yeah.
Here's another one for an interior. I mean, the cover itself is nice for the colors alone. It's pretty nice. It's probably like a VF issue. I've definitely not seen, you know, that one of those in high grade doesn't come along every day. But that you know, I think I got that 30 years ago. It has this incredible story in it that is about the evolution of mustard gas warfare during World War I, so trench warfare. And it's got this Severin kind of like semi-documentary style story that's done so cinematically. It's really hard to put it in words, so hopefully the pictures will show. So GI Combat with the Haunted Tank in particular. Yeah. This is part of the Purdy 30 run, so from number 75.
Can you explain what that is to everyone?
Yeah, I will. What I was kind of thinking was I would show you a couple of the comics from that run, but the wash tone covers that kind of look like somebody used a brush or did something that looks more like a painting than it does with line art. So if you compare that, you know, say to something that looks like this, which is also a cool cover, it doesn't have that same kind of painted look to it. And collectors, especially war collectors, refer to those as wash tone covers. So that is one of them. But GI Combat actually had a few wash tone covers. This is one of the ones that came a little bit later. This is number 69 with a wash tone cover, and it's got this guy in sort of jungle foliage. And along with them, later on, starting with number 75, which I don't have pictured here, 75, it was the beginning of what people call the Purdy 30. And the reason it's called the Purdy 30 is because they're starting with 75. There's 30 issues consecutively, just one after another, that are one wash tone after another. And they're all depicting different things. And I'm going to show a couple of those right here.
All in GI Combat, or are they across other series?
All GI Combat.
Okay.
So like if you looked at 75, the next issue, that one's wash tone, 76 wash tone, 77 wash tone, all the way up through from 75 through 104. Those 30 issues,
okay, all
wash tones. But this is number 83, and this is actually part of the Purdy 30. Yeah. And I put these two next to each other along with this one. They kind of create, we call the jungle foliage trifecta. They're in the jungle foliage, and they're aiming in the same direction, same kind of composition, same kind of color scheme, and sweat and all that stuff. So GI Combat, two of those. This is Our Fighting Forces 71. The middle one is 83, and that one over there is number 69.
Yeah, those are awesome.
And I might as well then show
I like the dog, by the way.
Yeah, that's Pooch. You can't go wrong with Pooch. Speaking of wash tone of Purdy 30, this is number 78. And it is,
Yeah.
it's one of the things that got me into DC War. I remember seeing that at a local comic book shop in the late 80s, seeing it on the wall and thinking, wait, that has a DC bullet on it. What is a DC bullet doing on this comic? Because if you look at that, you know, that's just so different than like Superman or Batman or the things I was used to seeing the DC bullet on. That doesn't belong on that comic. So how could that be a DC? Oh, there it is. It's GI. Wait, that's the thing that I read when I was a kid. I remember reading GI Combat when I was a kid. Oh, wow, that's interesting. So I picked that up and I was like, wait, hold on. That looks like Joe Kubert. It's Joe Kubert wash tone. And just the cover scene alone with no word balloons, you can't beat that.
No, you can't.
It's incredible.
It really is. It's a piece of art.
Yeah, that's one of those things where like you go, if the original art of that had existed, how much of my collection would I be willing to sell to you? So this is Armament War 79. And it is really kind of a non-key. There's nothing incredibly important about it in the price guide. It's not broken out at all. I don't know that most collectors really care that much about it. I personally care about it because it's when Joe Kubert did this story called What's the Price of a B-17? And Kubert, it's almost like Kubert was hanging out with Russ Heath one weekend and said, hey, you know, let's meld our styles a little bit here. And I'm going to do this one story that's got cross-hatching, but it's going to have all the signature things about Kubert that make Kubert great, but I'm also going to put in stuff that it's not my typical MO. And I'm going to give it all the beauty of a Russ Heath, almost photographic look. And that's what that comic is. It has it has that story in it. That story, What's the Price of a B-17, has been reprinted multiple times, and it's considered a classic among a lot of collectors, even before people got into collecting those in a big way. It's almost like DC Comics knew what they had with that story. And it was reprinted even in the 60s. So, Armament War, early Sergeant Rock issue. And that is number 91. It's got a Jerry Grandinetti cover, but on the inside, it's all Kubert. It's a Kubert-like Sergeant Rock fest of all time. It's got 3 Sergeant Rock stories in there, and they had never done that before. They had only done one story before in Sergeant Rock, in Armament War. This was the first issue where they said, let's go ahead, if he's popular and people really like him, let's go ahead and put 3 stories in there, and they'll all be drawn by Joe Kubert. It's as good as it gets, and the artwork inside is peak period Kubert.
It is the Combat Happy Joes of Easy Company.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
So this one, again, another non-key. Nobody in DC, even DC collectors, you know, war collectors, just, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that important of an issue. But there's one single panel in this that I consider maybe one of the great quintessential Kubert panels, where he's kind of like, it's hand-to-hand combat, and it comes down to, you know, like this sort of night scene where you see the deep inks, and just what Kubert put into this one single panel is what I consider to be one of his most sort of signature works, especially from that time period. This, by the way, is slightly earlier than that, the previous one, the Armament War.
Right.
This is another wash tone book. It's a kind of a tough issue to find because it's got the deep blacks all around the corners and the edges of the cover, so it's extremely difficult to find and grade. And when it arrived in the mail, I just couldn't believe it. It just didn't even seem possible. So that's a cool book just for the colors and the, you know, what's on the cover alone.
In grade, this book is hard to stop looking at. It's so vibrant, and it brings you right there.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's if I could ever have a copy of this book, I'd want it.
By Jerry Grandinetti.
Yeah.
Again, the cover king, and then it's a wash tone. It's actually the second wash tone of all the Big 5 war comics. The first one is this one, and this is Star Spangled War 45. That's the first wash tone in all the DC war titles. I don't know that it's the first wash tone ever, but it's certainly early in the process. It is definitely the earliest in all the Big 5 war titles. And just the color scheme on that, you know, the dynamics of the characters and the composition, that's an extraordinary comic. and super tough in grade.
Yeah, this cover is amazing, and what he's jumping into.
Yeah.
It's just such a unique, the way it explodes red.
Yeah.
It really kind of brings you to what he's experiencing,
Yeah, I know it's the first.
It is the first issue.
It is the first War Comics issue that has a wash tone effect.
But
look at the way
There's
the
a
color
big
scheme
difference.
is on both of these two.
Yeah.
It's hard if you were a kid. You're 8 years old and you have to decide between, something like a superhero book or a western or something like that, and you see this on the stand. It'd be hard to pass that up.
Right.
It'd be really hard.
It's hard to pass up now.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Star Spangled War Stories. This was not the first appearance, but a later issue with Mademoiselle Marie, and she's a French resistance fighter, and a great comic that features Mort Drucker art. Again, it's pre Mad Magazine Mort Drucker, but just exquisite. He's kind of doing this interplay between light and shadow, and it's just oozing with that all throughout this comic. So it's really worth checking out just for the story alone. Not easy to find, even in lower grades. These Mademoiselle Maries are actually kind of, I think some people are finally figuring out just how good these are. And they were not, to my knowledge, widely reprinted. So Army at War, this is Army at War 112. This is sort of like one of those things where you look at it and you're like, wait, is that even what it appears to be? It's super iconic, and it's got what all war comics know as the Brady Bunch cover. And the Brady Bunch cover is this sort of beloved cover that shows the roster of all the guys in Easy Company, with Sergeant Rock right in the center, where Alice, the live-in maid that cleaned up the house. This is Sergeant Rock in the center, and it's got the guys of Easy Company all around. Interestingly, with issue 113, when they had the introduction of Wildman and Jackie Johnson, who happened to be the first African-American character in war comics, and what I would consider to be a really, really positive portrayal of a character that, until that point, very few black characters had made it into mainstream DC or Marvel comics at all. And this, with issue 113, that was an incredibly cool and key first appearance of this character that was a supporting character in Sergeant Rock and the guys of Easy Company, and continued to be for decades.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
One of my favorite covers. I mean, I've loved this book for a long time. This is one I am familiar with.
Yep.
As fun as it gets.
The last of the 10 centers, too, for Army at War.
Yeah, box 10 center.
Yep. Okay, Our Fighting Forces 51. Cool Russ Heath cover. Frogman. Find that in high grade with the black edges and the borders. Forget it. I mean,
this is a pretty copy.
Yeah, and I got that from a guy that was selling the Salidas, and
tell everyone what Salida is.
Salida is a collection of comics that came out of Colorado, and they were mostly war comics. There's been lots and lots of different pedigrees or finds or big kind of single owner collections, but very, very few have ever come out that have war comics in them, and even fewer that have DC war comics. So there's a guy by the last name was Blankus, but he was in a town in Colorado called Salida, and he amassed these during the 50s. These were original owner comics, and allegedly put them in a shed in the backyard. Colorado appears to have some kind of like weather conditions that appear to be amenable to collectors, because it's like some of the most legendary comics of all time have come out of Colorado, including the Mile High. But this came out of Salida, Colorado, and to get just a bunch of comics from DC War that were all amassed by a single collector is pretty amazing. The pages on these are like copy paper white, and I mean like white in a way that I'd never seen comics before. It's
also hard to settle for any less once you see that. I mean, because it's not just, it seems like when you see pages like that, it's also the color strike.
Yeah.
So now you're looking at a full color strike on those pages, and they just hop out at you. So,
yeah. And there's some
these
I've
pages
seen atlases especially that do exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
And the atlases are just dripping color on the front cover. It's like a wet gloss on the cover, and you're like, is that even original? Did somebody do that, after the fact to make it look like that? No, they're fully original. They're that cool. Two more. This is a book called Sergeant Rock's Prize Battle Tales, and it's actually a reprint. It's an 80-page giant. And this actually came out before the series 80-page giant came out. This was the Sergeant Rock. It's almost like an annual. Well, they call it an annual. It's a war annual. So that is. Is
it no numbered, or is it in the numbering?
It's no number, so it doesn't. It's not part of the regular numbering. It gets its own title. I love the logo on it because it's got the the red, white, and blue, and they didn't really do that for very many DC war comics. But it's got amazing things, including, by the way, a reprint of What's the Price of a B-17. I think it's that one. I can't see from this angle, but yeah, What's the Price of a B-17? Yep, and that's an early reprint of that very issue.
Yeah.
To get it in that grade, I don't really have very many comics in my collection that are that nice. That thing is near mint at least. Super nice.
Yeah, so anyone that collects these knows that they were red, and also that the glue really usually had issues and really warped, like made channels in the cover. And even nice copies. And then once you get to the edges, they usually crunched.
Yeah.
And they gathered and broke.
Yep.
Not this.
Yeah.
So that's what he's talking about. This looks like a square wedge of comic book.
Yeah. It came from, this is the singular comic I have from that collection. It's called the Green River Collection. And again, another single owner collection, and just came out. I want to say I got it way back in like the late 80s. And I've had it ever since. So, I don't regret getting that at all. This is a GI Combat again. And just the color scheme alone is amazing.
Yeah.
But I love what he's saying there. He says, if you want it back, come and get it. And he's like, he's full on like looking at you, the viewer. If you were a kid, walking into a store and seeing that, it'd be hard to pass that up. That's crazy. And that's a Grandinetti cover too. He knew what he was doing with that all the way.
That's fantastic. Boom.
Super nice. Yeah.
You sure that you can, there's none of those you want to show? We got time for one more.
Okay, one more.
One more.
Well, you know what I'll do is I'll show you one of these. I'll show you a couple of these CGC books. So this is a comic called Marines in Action. I think it's number 9. It's in a slab.
That's and really nice.
It's a classic Heath cover. I think what I love about this Heath is that it really kind of depicts what's about to happen versus what has already happened or what is happening right at the moment. This is more the anticipation of the thing that's about to happen, and it's kind of it's subtle because if you look at it from a distance, it's hard to see what's going on. It almost looks like just the tree itself, but then when you look a little closer in the shadow of the tree, there he is. And I love the look on his face with the shadows and the deep shadows over his eye sockets. It's almost like the sheer emotion to this is way out there. Truly amazing.
Thank you. That is awesome.
I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but it's yet another Heath cover, and again, use of amazing colors and shadows. It's almost no Heath collector can have a complete collection if you don't have smoke billowing up in the background. There has to be some Heath cover in your collection that's got smoke billowing up, hopefully in a night sky background. And this has got all that in everything you would want in a Heath war comic. There's a few more. This is Star Spangled War Stories number 90, and that is the first dinosaur issue. I have to admit, I'm going to betray a little bit of myself here. I didn't initially appreciate that run when I first started collecting war comics. And it's not that I didn't like dinosaurs. It's just I didn't really like the genre kind of like crossing over with war comics. And then I started to read them when I was an adult, and I was like, these are actually pretty good. And I used to think back, I used to draw tanks and dinosaurs on a landscape on like Volcano when I was in 2nd grade. I knew there's something I was thinking right. So that's what that is. That's the first dinosaur war book. And it started actually a fairly long run of about 45 or so issues that went from number 90 up to 137.
And me and my brother have always appreciated those. I remember being young and just liking the fact that it's war and dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Great covers.
Right.
All right.
Okay, 2 more, and then so this one is All American Men of War 62, and again, sort of like there's nothing key about this. There's nothing incredibly special about it except for just the front cover. The front cover is it's so compelling, where you've got this guy who is looking right into the foreground. He's looking at you, the reader. I would imagine somebody looking at that and looking at what else was on the stand. So like that's going up against things like Showcase, and they're the beginning of kind of like the superhero age for DC Comics, but it's going up against stuff like that, and it had to be good to get kids' attention. That would have gotten my attention. That's a Granite Edge cover.
It's great.
This last one is by Joe Kubert. It's from the Army at War run, and what I love about this one is a friend of mine shared that this is the first appearance, and this is like, this is comics geek land, so we've got to geek out over something. But this is the first appearance of Sergeant Rock with the double bandoliers. Bandoliers are the things where we got the casings on, he's carrying those around so that, when he runs out of ammunition, that he's got those things. And so that he's got the bandoliers. Rock was kind of notorious for carrying double bandoliers. It always seemed like, whenever they were in a fix, he always had those. And my friend said that those things weigh a ton. Like a single bandolier would weigh a ton, and if you're free to put 2 of them on you, would just about crush you, and there's no way you'd be able to jump around. But he's Sergeant Rock. That's all that matters. And by the way, that's exquisite Joe Kubert period. That's the final issue before it's number 99.
Yeah.
And that's the late 10 center, but just an absolutely wonderful period of Joe Kubert. That's it for DC War.
DC War, yeah, thank you very much. We kind of ran through a lot of books.
And Atlas War, too.
And Atlas War, yeah. So thank you, and we're going to talk some more about comic books very soon. Thanks for showing up.
Right on. My pleasure.
All right, bye.